are so many of them, and they are so exuberant, the Biafrans. Even the refugees sing, especially when they have just been told their homes have been recaptured and they can go back to them. They sing when they get their daily meal. They sing when they work. They sing when they practice army marching. No guns, no shoes, but a song that goes something like, "Thank you, General Ojukwu, for giving us the medicine with which to fight our enemies instead of being murdered in our beds." A kind of spirit that has kept them going through 2 years of starvation and defeat. A spirit that arises partly out of fear. Fear expressed by Chief of Staff Philip Effian.
I am sure that if the Nigerians
There are so many of them, and they are so exuberant, the Biafrans. Even the refugees sing, especially when they have just been told their homes have been recaptured and they can go back to them. They sing when they get their daily meal. They sing when they work. They sing when they practice army marching. No guns, no shoes, but a song that goes something like, "Thank you, General Ojukwu, for giving us the medicine with which to fight our enemies instead of being murdered in our beds." A kind of spirit that has kept them going through 2 years of starvation and defeat. A spirit that arises partly out of fear. Fear expressed by Chief of Staff Philip Effian.
I am sure that if the Nigerians can control our links with the outside world, our radio links and our air links, so that we are completely cut off and they are in control of everything here, I am quite certain that they will really go to town and murder everything in sight.
A spirit and a self-confidence that has kept trucks rolling somehow, armies growing somehow, life organized somehow, in a nightmare period in which 1 out of 10, at least, of all their countrymen have died of starvation.
This is Lagos, capital of all Nigeria except Biafra. It is difficult to imagine that this is the headquarters city of a military government mobilized to fight a bitter civil war. But there is hardly a uniform in sight.
The fact is that Nigeria is not really mobilized. Only a few thousand square miles of a nation more than 100 times that big are touched by that war. There are no shortages. There is no starvation. In the vast northern stretches of Nigeria, the Muslim prayer day is consecrated as it has been for centuries. And there is not a soldier to be seen. "800 miles away at the University of Ibadan, the student body last week was preoccupied with final examinations. There is no draft in Nigeria, and almost none of the students have volunteered. Only in the war-wrecked ghost towns of the East could I see palpable evidence of a country fighting for its life, and not one Nigerian in 1,000 has seen this. In all of Lagos, the only building dressed for war is the military headquarters. And throughout the country, plaintive advertisements in government newspapers and radio stations plead with Nigeria's citizens. If you don't fight the war, they say, nobody else will. But the 35-year-old Nigerian Chief of State, General Yakubu Gowon, says there is a good reason why Nigeria does not go all out in the civil war.
We're fighting our own brothers, our own friends, our own probably colleagues that in fact we were trained together. Now, I accept them as my people. I don't call them enemies. They're not my enemies. That's why in fact we don't use the word enemy. We use the word only rebels against Ojukwu and his clique and those in fact that fight for him, but not against all the Igbos. Now, therefore, we've got to do, we must not do anything that is going to make it impossible for us to reconcile at the end, or it will make the winning of the heart difficult in the end.
Let's pause now for some of the history behind this bloody war. It is said, though no one knows for sure, that 1 of every 4 black men on the African continent is a Nigerian. There were 55 million of them before the war. Nigeria was a creation of British colonialism. At the turn of the century, Britain carved out the richest area in West Africa, lumped together 250 tribes, each with its own culture, its own history, and arbitrarily called these people Nigerians. Of those tribes, 3 were dominant: the Hausas, most numerous, Muslims in the north, medieval, lagging behind the others in education and commerce; the Yorubas in the west, animists and Christians, the first educated; and the Igbos in the east, where Christianity is now strongest.
Some say the Igbos were the most backward, but in the last quarter century, with the aid of European missionary education, the Igbo overtook the others and became the most powerful economic group of all. But the Igbo also wanted political power. He resented the strength of the Hausas and Yorubas, who, since Nigerian independence in 1960, had run the country and grown corrupt. Riding a wave of popular discontent, Igbo and other military officers in 1966 succeeded in a coup d'etat. They executed key non-Igbo politicians and several of the top non-Igbo military officers. For a while, it seemed the country applauded the coup. But once in power, this new Igbo-dominated government was felt to be guilty of the same corruption as the previous government. Additionally, Igbo merchants and civil servants all over Nigeria began showing a newfound arrogance and sense of superiority, building a resentment that culminated in a wave of terror against the Igbo. Estimates of the number of Igbo massacred in northern Nigeria range from 7,000 to 30,000. Surviving Igbos abandoned their homes and businesses. Millions of them fled to the Igbo heartland in the east. There, led by the charismatic Ojukwu, army officer, son of a wealthy Igbo family, they seceded, proclaiming Biafra an independent nation. To begin with, Biafra claimed this corner of Nigeria, which included territory containing several minority tribes, some of whom did not support the Igbo cause.
Following Biafra's secession in 1967, Nigeria invaded from the north. Biafra struck back across its own boundaries, conquered and held for a while territory in federal Nigeria. But in 2 years of war, federal Nigerian troops have whittled down Biafra from over 50,000 square miles to little more than 3,000. The fighting in this war is sporadic. There are few fixed military positions, no real front lines, many hit-and-run raids by both sides, and an occasional big battle for a city or a road junction.
This is Nkwalo Junction, right now about 3 miles behind the furthest advance of Biafran troops to the south. There was heavy fighting here in early May as the Biafrans retook the town. Nkwalo Junction is 25 miles from Port Harcourt, a major seaport and refinery city the Biafrans want back. The Biafran troops we found at this road junction were a ragtag collection, looking more like irregulars than the frontline soldiers of the 14th Division, who are currently engaged in Biafra's most successful offensive of the war. How the Biafran army succeeds, armed as it is with an odd-lot collection of weapons, is a puzzle. Some at the front carry communist-made AK-47s, like those used by the Viet Cong. Some only World War I bolt-action antiques. Others modern British semi-automatics. And their pride and heaviest weapon, a .30 caliber machine gun just captured from the Nigerians. Much, in fact, of what the Biafrans are now using against the Nigerians, they have taken from them. One military man up here told me, not totally as a joke, that Biafra now looks upon the Nigerian army as its quartermaster general. And if the Nigerian army runs on beer and bullets, the Biafran army lacks both, with ammunition constantly in critically short supply. These troops had advanced 6 miles in less than a week. Then, practically out of ammunition, were forced to stop on the road to Port Harcourt until more supplies trickled down to them. One of this army's other problems is staying large enough to continue the fight against Nigerians. When Biafra seceded in 1967, it had fewer than 1,000 men under arms, and those mostly officers and clerks. Now it has been built up to between 45 and 60,000. The exact number, a military secret. Volunteers made the original army build-up easy. Now conscription of virtually all able-bodied young men is underway. And in a former school compound, we found recruits drilling, marching in the mud to the improbable tune of Margie. These new soldiers are also taught the rudiments of jungle warfare and ambush, to be used against an enemy which holds most of Biafra's major cities, several vital road links, but not too much of the countryside. The training is basic, but effective.
We're going to stab us right by the shoulder here, and we want to defend it. Go.
And here I met a young trooper, a very young trooper in the Biafran army. How old are you?
I'm 10 years.
10 years old.
Yes.
Do you know why Biafra is fighting?
Biafra is fighting for survival.
Is it going to win?
Yes, sir.
His spirit, and that of this tattered army, driven by fear of genocide which may or may not lie ahead if they lose, plus what must be massive ineptitude on the part of the Nigerian army, is the most probable reason that this war of unequals now has gone into its 3rd year.
Nigeria before the war had an army of just 6,000, and they were professionals, their officers trained by the British. They served with distinction as part of the UN force in the Congo. But then Biafra declared its secession, and all of the Igbo officers and men, some of the best, left to become the nucleus of Biafra's army. In just the past 2 years, Nigeria's army has exploded to 14 times its original size, to 85,000 men. Recruits who used to get 6 months of training now get a mere 6 weeks. They are volunteers, most of them illiterate, just out of the bush, with little sense of nationhood. Their leaders tell them that they are fighting for one Nigeria, but that